On paper, the operation was a disaster, a clinical catastrophe that left the Forrester boardroom buzzing with rumors and the hospital's morbidity conference bracing for fallout. An official pronouncement that Luna Nozawa had slipped away on the table. Yet the real story began only after the chart closed. Dr. Lee Finnegan, steel-spined and cold-eyed even on her kindest days, refused to let the scandal burn her career a second time. One traumatic brush with hiding a patient's survival had taught her exactly how to disappear a body in plain sight. She forged the fatal rhythm strip, spliced timestamps on the surgical cameras, and stapled a falsified death certificate to the back of Luna's chart. While the administrative staff prepared condolence letters, Lee rerouted Luna down a service elevator, across a utility corridor, and into a negative pressure isolation suite sealed off for HVAC testing, the passcode known only to her. She dialed the oxygen, slipped an experimental neuroregenerative cocktail into the 4, and watched the monitors steady into a thin but stubborn life. For the outside world, Luna was ashes scattered at sea. Inside room X-31, she was a heartbeat waiting to restart. Lee labeled the scheme a mercy, an untraceable rebirth that would spare Luna the public's thirst for blame and spare Lee the board's hunger for scapegoats. She told herself the lie until it passed for truth. The first crack in secrecy came when Poppy, searching for trinkets to place in a memorial shadow box, noticed Luna's favorite charm bracelet missing from the effects inventory. A nurse, already uneasy about Lee's lockdown order, blurted an apology for whatever Dr. Finnegan's doing in the test ward. Instinct trumped grief. Poppy followed badge logs through the sub-basement and found her daughter pale, but alive beneath dim ultraviolet lights. Relief hit like a tidal wave, but horror followed a breath later, Lee standing sentinel, unwavering, dictating that Luna had been granted a second life on the condition of absolute silence. Poppy's sob tore the sterile hush. Lee silenced it with a glare sharp enough to cut bone. She can't go back, Lee hissed. Public outrage would crush her, and Steffi Forrester would use the tragedy to rewrite herself a hero. This is Luna's reset, no paparazzi, no vendettas against our family. You will mourn the girl she was and protect the woman she can become. Poppy, stunned by the audacity, weighed maternal gratitude against moral revulsion. In the end, love won. She signed the non-disclosure forms, bit her tongue until it bled, and walked out past the nurse's station wearing grief like costume jewelry. Inside isolation, the weeks blurred. The neurococktail rewired damaged pathways, knitting synapses in painful jolts that left Luna convulsing, screaming into soundproof walls. She surfaced from nightmares of scalpels and cold light into a limbo where her own death trended on social media. Friends posted eulogies, and Steffi's statement framed the tragedy as a somber reminder of fashion's high stakes. Every mention of Steffi forging forward with a triumphant new line while the world wept for Luna drove needles into Luna's raw psyche. Isolation fostered obsession. Between seizures, she replayed old live streams of Steffi dismissing her design sketches as too pedestrian, interviews where Steffi's grin stretched wide discussing necessary sacrifices for innovation. Rage fermented. Lee interpreted the fury as a spark of life. She whispered that the universe had erased Luna's history and offered blank pages, that vengeance would only chain her to the past. Luna listened, nodded, and in the small hours rehearsed a different vow. She would crawl back into daylight not as a cautionary tale, but as a storm Steffi would never see coming. 3 months post-death, Lee declared Luna stable enough for the next phase, identity erasure. She hacked the state vital records index, updating the cause of death to intraoperative hemorrhage, pushed it through federal databases, and purged Luna's passport. Concurrently, she created a shell identity. Allegra Lang, a half-Swiss, half-Japanese textile chemist with a decade in European research labs. Lee's prototype required scars concealed, accent recalibrated, and mannerisms sanded down to nothing recognizable. Luna embraced the metamorphosis with unnerving zeal, learning a lilting Bernese cadence, bleaching her hair into icy platinum, and tracing a blue-tinged tattoo over the surgical scar to transform it from weakness into war paint. Poppy balked when first shown the new passport. The daughter she knew dissolved behind contact lenses and an unfamiliar smile. Lee insisted this rebirth was salvation. Luna, voice low and flat, called it weaponization. Meanwhile, the Forrester empire thrummed with opportunistic grief. Steffi rebranded the ill-fated showcase as a philanthropic capsule, auctioning Luna's final sketches for charity and positioning herself as champion of designer mental health. Press coverage painted Steffi a visionary. Tragedy transformed into triumph. Bill Spencer raised an eyebrow but printed the narrative. Hope Logan offered condolences on air, and even Finn defended Steffi at hospital fundraisers, citing the unpredictability of surgical outcomes. She never noticed the new lab tech in charge of the temperature-sensitive pigment slated for the finale gown. Allegra smiled politely, adjusted the cooling unit, and left a vial of micro-encapsulated thermochromic dye on Steffi's desk. A shade that shifted from pure ivory to blood red at 98 degrees Fahrenheit, body heat activated. The Sabotage was almost poetic. On the hottest runway under lights designed to mimic desert noon, Steffi's pristine symbol of rebirth would bleed before the world's cameras. The night before the show, Lee tracked Luna via a cloned phone signal, confronting her backstage. The confrontation was volcanic. Lee citing ethics and the fragility of a second chance, Luna countering with Steffi's exploitation and the hypocrisy of Lee's own deception. Lee threatened police. Luna reminded her the forged death certificate would surface. They reached stalemate in the shadow of silk drapes and steel trusses. Luna fled through service corridors, shedding her badge and wig, emerging into an alley where Poppy waited, tears streaking makeup, engine of an unmarked sedan idling. Mother and daughter locked eyes across a chasm no apology could bridge. Luna climbed in, blood-red dye staining her gloves like evidence, and whispered, "Drive." Poppy hesitated, then hit the gas, betraying her own conscience for the child she'd already mourned once. By dawn, tabloids screamed blood gown scandal, sponsors threatened lawsuits, and Steffi locked herself inside the main office swearing she'd uncover the saboteur. Bill smelled ratings gold. Hope urged empathy. Finn patched rifts while questioning Lee's whereabouts. The police obtained a warrant for Allegra Lang's lab, finding it scrubbed clean except for a single sketch tacked to the wall. Steffi's silhouette drowning in a torrent of scarlet brushstrokes, signed only with a small crescent moon, Luna's childhood doodle. The message was unmistakable. Rebirth had come not for Steffi, but for the girl the world pronounced dead. Lee resigned from the hospital ahead of inquiry, citing burnout. She boxed her degrees, wondering when saving lives had become collateral damage in her private war against shame. Poppy and Luna crossed state lines, new passports in a glove compartment, cash stuffed beneath floor mats, destiny unspooling across asphalt. Each mile stretched the silence thicker until Poppy asked the question pulsing behind every heartbeat, "What now?" Luna watched sunrise ignite the horizon, eyes unwavering. "Now," she said, "we don't hide, we hunt." Steffi took my voice. "I'll take her crown, thread by golden thread." The car swallowed the highway, two fugitives chasing a vendetta that promised no peace. Back in Los Angeles, the Forrester fortress bristled with security, yet paranoia seeped through cracks money couldn't seal. Every bouquet might hold toxins, every fabric shipment a Trojan horse. Steffi slept with lights on, the phantom stain blooming every time she closed her eyes. She unveiled a mannequin wearing Steffi's new unreleased silhouette, inverted, twisted, lined with threads that unraveled at a single tug. Symbolic destruction waiting for the right stage. Finn pleaded medical compassion. Luna's scans still showed microlesions, rage a symptom, not a choice. Luna countered that choice was all she had left, that Lee stole her agency by scripting rebirth. She brandished a flash drive. Gigabytes of incriminating files, including the death certificate forgery, ready to upload. The stalemate vibrated with tension thicker than silk. Poppy broke first, stepping between daughter and scalpel-sharp retaliation. She confessed aiding theft, begged Lee for clemency, begged Steffi for mercy, begged Luna to lay down revenge. Tears stained concrete. For a heartbeat, time froze. Luna met her mother's eyes and saw not betrayal, but the desperate terror of losing a child twice. Something cracked inside the fury, a fissure no hatred could seal. She lowered the drive. Steffi exhaled. Lee moved to embrace Luna, but sirens sliced the night. Local police, tipped off by Forrester security tracking devices hidden in settlement folders. Chaos surged. Luna bolted through dye vats, heading for the roof. Finn chased, calling her name until his voice broke. She reached the edge overlooking the Mississippi, city lights flickering like camera flashes. Below, water turned black and unforgiving. Helicopter rotors thundered, spotlights scalded. Luna stared down 20 feet of rusted ladder to an alley. She looked back at Finn, empathy carved into features she once trusted, and at Steffi, face a portrait of conflict. Lee's voice pierced the din. Luna, please let me fix this. Luna's lips curved in a ghost of a smile. You already did, Mother. You taught me resurrection. She dropped the flash drive to the rooftop, stepped onto the ladder, and vanished into darkness. Police swarmed but found no trace, just swirling river mist and the distant wail of a calliope on Bourbon Street. Days later, headlines wondered about the mystery saboteur's escape. Steffi spun survivor rhetoric, Lee faced suspension pending inquiry, Finn wrestled guilt, and Poppy boarded a bus east with no forwarding address. Somewhere between city limits and the bleeding horizon, Luna, hood up, eyes forward, scrolled her phone. Bank alerts pinged. Anonymous donors were funding Crescent Ashes after the viral gown spectacle. Her brand had launched itself. She whispered a silent thank you to the audience that mourned her, the press that crowned Steffi, the doctor who faked her death, and the mother who lied for love. Every betrayal was thread in her loom. She pocketed the phone, pulled her jacket tight, and settled into the hum of the long road. Vengeance was no longer a single strike. It was a couture collection, debuting soon, stitched from secrets, dyed in blood-red resolve, modeled on the runway between life and legend, a show the world would never forget. Liam Spencer lay motionless beneath the relentless pulse of ICU monitors, every artificial beep marking borrowed seconds. The surgeons had removed a bleeding hematoma in a race against time, but the inoperable tumor still coiled deep inside his brain like a fuse already lit. The hospital's low light painted the Forrester family waiting area in bruised hues as Bill paced with all the force of a caged storm. He had burned through 3 CEOs, 2 publicists, and a small mountain of bourbon over the years, yet nothing had prepared him for the sight of his son quiet as stone, tethered to machines instead of making another impossible choice between Hope and Steffi. Across the corridor, Hope Logan sat rigid, hands folded so tight her knuckles failed to blanch. They were past white and into a colorless void. She replayed every argument she ever started, every time she pushed Liam toward business trips, every second she could have noticed headaches he brushed off. On the opposite end, Steffi Forrester hovered by the glass, guarding the doorway as fiercely as she once guarded the Forrester runway, refusing to yield an inch to guilt or fate. They did not speak. They breathed the same antiseptic air, shared the same ache, and waited for any sign Finn might step out and say the word stable. Instead, Finn emerged with shoulders slumped and eyes ringed red. His voice broke before he managed a whisper. The swelling was controlled, but the tumor remained an assassin hiding in plain sight, and time was bleeding out faster than the monitors could count. Back in his office, Finn opened a secure line to Zurich, to a Phase 2 gene editing trial so experimental even the FDA kept its name buried in footnotes. The therapy used a CRISPR-delivered viral vector to target glioblastoma cells, rewriting DNA like a scribe in the margins of fate. Only 6 patients worldwide had received it. 2 were in remission, 1 experienced catastrophic cerebral edema, and 3 had simply not woken up. But Finn saw no other door. What he could not scrub from his conscience was that slot number 7 was originally reserved for an infant with astrocytoma, a baby girl who, until Liam crashed into the ER, had been the center of Finn's every spare thought. By pushing Liam's data forward, he was effectively exchanging one life for another, and he felt the moral weight as a physical pressure on his chest. Still, he drafted the transfer forms, encrypted every scan, and pressed send, all while telling himself that if he saved Liam, he could live with the cost. The reply from Zurich was blunt. 1 seat left, $1 million buy-in, full release of liability upon death. They needed a decision by dawn. Bill didn't hesitate. He called Spencer Publications CFO, liquidated a discretionary investment reserve, and ordered a wire so large the Swiss banker asked for voice authentication twice. Yet money alone could not cut through the fine print carved by international law. Liam's next of kin had to sign a waiver acknowledging the trial could kill him faster than the tumor, that his body might never return from Europe, that results might be published for profit. Hope flinched at the cruelty of language crafted to erase blame. Steffi bristled at how the document reduced Liam to a subject. But Bill set the papers on the conference table, a sleek slab of walnut that gleamed under fluorescent light, and declared they would either sign or watch Liam fade. At first, the 2 women recoiled into old fault lines, Hope accusing Steffi of seeing only the adrenaline rush of a miracle headline, Steffi firing back that Hope merely clung to the familiar comfort of safe options. Voices rose enough that nurses shut hallway doors. Then Finn stepped in, not as doctor but as husband and father, and admitted the truth. He had sacrificed another child's chance without consulting anyone. The confession sliced through the room. Silence rushed in, denser than any argument. Hope stared at Finn as though he were a stranger. Steffi's shoulders dropped, fury bled into shock. Bill absorbed it all, jaw set, because blame was a luxury none of them could afford. The waiver passed from hand to hand. Hope signed first, tears finally spilling as she pressed pen to paper, her name looping unsteadily across lines that said Liam's death would not tarnish Zurich's ledger. Steffi's signature came next, bold and angled, defiant even in surrender. Finn added his initials in cramped script. Bill signed last, sprawling, the ink heavy enough to seep through the page like spilled oil. With every stroke the clock hammered louder. Transport to Zurich would take 12 hours, pre-treatment conditioning another 6, yet the latest MRI showed intracranial pressure climbing. Finn scheduled an emergency flight, a medevac jet outfitted like a mobile ore. The roar of its engines that night over Los Angeles carried a weight none of them could articulate. In flight, Liam's vitals wobbled. Twice the ventilator alarm shrieked. Hope gripped his hand, whispering pieces of their first meet-cute at the fashion show, desperate for any twitch of recognition. Steffi sat opposite, scrolling through photos of Liam teaching their daughter to ride a bike, scenes flickering across the cabin's dim light. Bill stared out the porthole into nothing. Touchdown in Zurich was a blur of customs waivers and sterile hallways that smelled like snow and disinfectant. The lead researcher, Dr. Greta Weiss, met them clad in an isolation gown, her gray hair tucked beneath a surgical cap. She reviewed Liam's scans in rapid German-laced English, confirming the tumor's margin loomed millimeters from his motor cortex, a minefield no scalpel dared approach. The protocol called for a lumbar puncture to deliver the viral payload, then 48 hours of induced hypothermia while the edited cells replicated. The margin for error was thinner than a strand of silk. Bill asked what happened if Liam coded mid-process. Dr. Weiss answered without blinking, resuscitation was contraindicated. The vector could scatter to healthy tissue if circulation spiked. Essentially, To save him, they had to be willing to let him drift into a controlled near-death state. Hope felt her legs buckle, but Steffi caught her elbow, steady for once in unity rather than rivalry. Inside the glass-walled treatment suite, Finn guided the team inserting the catheter. He checked every valve twice, triple-checked dosage calculations, his earlier guilt coiled tight but compartmentalized. As the vector flowed, Liam's vitals plummeted exactly as predicted. Hours crawled. Outside, the city's church bells tolled dawn while inside the thermal blankets chilled Liam's body to 32 degrees Celsius. Dr. Weiss watched EEG lines flatten toward a whisper of activity. She remarked that if the therapy worked, microglial cleanup would begin at hour 36. If it failed, necrosis would spread before they could read the next chart. Bill, Hope, and Steffi camped in shifts under fluorescent lights that never fully dimmed. Old grievances melted under the blunt heat of fear. Hope admitted she used to dream of a normal life with Liam far from fashion wars and corporate takeovers. Steffi confessed that part of her loved the chaos because it proved Liam's heart still beat for them both. Bill listened, realizing his sons had always been collateral in his quest to dominate headlines. Between whispered confessions, each of them watched Finn pacing behind the glass, shoulders stiff, gaze locked on monitors as waves of green and red lights told a story no words could match. Hour 36 arrived with no sign of necrosis. Weiss allowed Liam's body to warm by half a degree. EEG lines fluttered. A blip grew into a rhythm. Finn exhaled for the first time in a day. At hour 42, the gene-edited cells showed targeted apoptosis of tumor tissue on PET imaging. It was the first glimmer of victory. But as body temperature rose, cerebral edema loomed. Weiss ordered mannitol and a second cooling cycle. Too fast a rewarm could undo everything. The balance was maddening. Kill the tumor, spare the brain, keep Liam alive. Bill found himself praying to a god he normally invoked only in speeches. Hope pressed her forehead to the glass, muttering that Liam owed her a lifetime of arguments, stubborn kids, burnt lasagna, anything. Steffi finally allowed a single tear to fall and didn't bother wiping it. Then, at hour 48, an alarm shrieked. Liam's blood pressure crashed. Ultrasound revealed pericardial effusion, a rare but lethal vector reaction. Emergency pericardiocentesis was the only fix, yet the needle risked puncturing the cooling catheter line. Finn took the syringe himself, hands steady, voice low, guiding the tip millimeter by mill.